My older sister stole my full scholarship. I got her expelled for cheating. The principal's cousin, how my family connection exposed a bully and destroyed her life. Your mom's a pathetic loser who couldn't even keep her husband. No wonder daddy left you for someone better. Those were the words Rachel Martinez said to my 8-year-old daughter Emma as she walked to her classroom at Riverside Elementary School. My name is Heather Young, I'm 34 years old, and I work as a family law paralegal in Sacramento, California. What Rachel didn't know was that her daily harassment of my children was about to backfire in ways she never imagined. You see, my cousin David happened to be the principal of that very school, and I had been quietly documenting every single incident for weeks. The morning I heard about Rachel's latest attack on my daughter, something clicked inside me. I wasn't angry, I was focused. After 15 years working in family law, I knew exactly how custody battles worked, what constituted harassment, and how school policies could be weaponized against bullies. Rachel Martinez, my ex-husband's new wife, thought she was untouchable because she had managed to charm her way into becoming a volunteer coordinator at the school. She had no idea she was about to face someone who understood the system better than she ever could. It started 6 months after my divorce from Marcus was finalized. Rachel, a 28-year-old Instagram influencer with bleached blonde hair and an attitude bigger than her follower count, had decided that destroying my children's school experience was going to be her favorite hobby. She would show up at school events, make snide comments to other parents about my failure as a wife, and most disturbingly, she began directly confronting my kids during school hours. Marcus and I had met in college. He was studying business. I was working toward my paralegal certification while raising my first child from a previous relationship. We built what I thought was a solid life together over 12 years of marriage. I supported his construction company through the lean years, managed our household finances with military precision, and maintained detailed records of everything, a habit that would serve me better than I ever imagined. The problems started when Marcus's business took off 3 years ago. Suddenly, my methodical, budget-conscious husband was buying expensive trucks, taking mysterious weekend trips, and coming home smelling like perfume that definitely wasn't mine. I noticed Rachel, first at Emma's school carnival in March, hanging all over Marcus while he tried to pretend they were just friends. She was everything I wasn't. Loud, flashy, and apparently unconcerned with the fact that she was openly flirting with a married man in front of his children. By April, Marcus had moved out, claiming he needed space to find himself. By May, Rachel's Instagram was full of pictures from romantic getaways with my husband. By June, they were engaged. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but I knew the truth. Marcus had traded his family for a trophy wife who promised him a lifestyle his middle-aged insecurities craved. The first incident happened during the second week of the new school year in September. Rachel had somehow gotten herself appointed as a volunteer lunch monitor, a position that gave her access to the cafeteria during my children's mealtimes. Emma came home crying, saying, Daddy's new girlfriend had told her that her lunch looked as sad as her mom probably feels every morning. That's when I started my documentation system. Every incident, every witness, every date and time, all carefully recorded in a digital file, I backed up to 3 separate cloud services. As a paralegal specializing in family law, I knew that emotional harm to children was taken seriously by family courts, especially when it could be proven with concrete evidence. The second incident escalated things significantly. Rachel cornered my 10-year-old son Jake in the library, telling him that his father was happier than he'd ever been, and that Jake should stop being such a mama's boy. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, witnessed the entire exchange and was so disturbed, she immediately called me. That conversation went straight into my evidence file, along with Mrs. Chen's written statement. But Rachel's biggest mistake was thinking she was smarter than everyone around her. What she didn't know was that Principal David Young wasn't just some random administrator. He was my cousin, someone I'd grown up with, someone who had watched me build my career in family law and knew exactly how competent I was at building legal cases. David called me on a Wednesday evening in early October. Heather, he said, I need to talk to you about what's happening at school. Off the record, I've been getting reports about Marcus's new wife, and frankly, what I'm hearing is deeply concerning. I met David at a coffee shop the next morning at 7:30 a.m., bringing with me a folder containing every piece of documentation I had collected. Printed emails, time-stamped photos, witness statements, even screenshots of Rachel's social media posts, where she bragged about putting entitled ex-wives in their place. Jesus, Heather, David said, flipping through the evidence. This is harassment, plain and simple. But more than that, she's creating a hostile environment for your kids at school. I can ban her from school property immediately based on this alone. I was hoping you'd say that, I replied. But I want to do this strategically. Rachel thinks she's untouchable because she's charmed her way into the volunteer system. Let's give her enough rope to hang herself. We developed what I privately called Operation Documentation. David would continue to allow Rachel access to the school, but now every staff member would be subtly watching her interactions with my children. Every comment, every gesture, every inappropriate moment would be witnessed and recorded by trained professionals. The beauty of Rachel's personality was that she couldn't help herself. Give her an audience, and she'd perform. Give her what she perceived as power, and she'd abuse it. Over the next 3 weeks, Rachel accumulated enough documented incidents to fill a legal brief. The breaking point came during the school Halloween festival on October 28th. Rachel, dressed as what I can only describe as a sexy witch, completely inappropriate for a school event, decided to make her boldest move yet. While I was working the face painting booth, she approached Emma, who was dressed as a princess, and loudly announced, "Oh, honey, your costume is so pretty. Too bad your mom can't afford to buy you nice things anymore since Daddy found someone better to spend his money on." What Rachel didn't realize was that she said this directly in front of 3 other parents, 2 teachers, and my cousin David, who happened to be walking by at that exact moment. The whole exchange was also captured on the school's security camera, which recorded both video and audio of all outdoor festival areas. David approached me immediately. "That's it, Heather. I'm done watching this woman terrorize your kids. Are you ready to move?" I nodded. More than ready. But I want to do this right. Tomorrow is Friday. Let's make it memorable. Friday morning, I arrived at school at 8:15 a.m. with my children, just like any normal day. Rachel was already there, of course, setting up for some volunteer activity she'd inserted herself into. At exactly 8:30 a.m., David made an announcement over the school's PA system. "Rachel Martinez, please report to the principal's office immediately." I watched from the parking lot as Rachel strutted toward the administration building, probably assuming she was about to receive some kind of volunteer recognition. She had no idea that David's office now contained myself, the school district's legal counsel, a representative from Child Protective Services, and a process server with a restraining order petition. The meeting lasted exactly 47 minutes. I know because I timed it while I sat in my car, finishing up the paperwork for the emergency custody modification I planned to file that afternoon. At 9:17 a.m., Rachel burst out of the building, her face red with rage and tears streaming down. Her cheeks? She spotted me in the parking lot and made what turned out to be her final mistake. Marching over to my car, she began screaming, "You vindictive bitch! You think you're so smart with your little connections? Marcus will never let you get away with this." What Rachel didn't know was that my phone was recording the entire tirade, and that 3 other parents were also capturing her meltdown on their devices. Her threats, her profanity on school grounds, her admission that this had all been calculated revenge, everything went straight into what was now becoming a substantial evidence file. "Rachel," I said calmly, rolling down my window just enough to speak clearly, "you've just been served with a no-contact order regarding my children. You're also banned from this school property permanently. I'd suggest you leave now before school security has to escort you out." That afternoon, I walked into the offices of Peterson, Williams & Associates, the family law firm where I'd worked for 8 years, and requested an emergency meeting with my supervising attorney, Janet Peterson. Janet had been my mentor and had watched me develop into one of the most thorough paralegals in the county. When I laid out Rachel's documented harassment campaign, Janet's response was immediate. "Heather, this is exactly the kind of case that changes custody arrangements permanently. With your documentation and the school's backing, we can file for an emergency modification based on emotional harm to the children. But more than that, we can argue that Marcus exercised poor judgment in allowing his new wife to have contact with the kids. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday. I spent the weekend preparing what I privately called the Rachel Files, a comprehensive presentation that included audio recordings, video footage, witness statements, and a psychological evaluation report I'd commissioned from Dr. Sarah Kim, a child psychologist who specialized in parental alienation cases. Marcus and Rachel arrived at the courthouse with their attorney, clearly expecting this to be a minor proceeding that would be dismissed quickly. Marcus hadn't taken the situation seriously because Rachel had convinced him that I was just being a jealous ex-wife trying to cause trouble. Judge Maria Hernandez read through my documentation for nearly 20 minutes before looking up at Marcus and his legal team. "Mr. Young, are you aware of the extent of your wife's interactions with your children at their school?" Marcus stammered. "Your Honor, Rachel was just trying to be involved in the kids' lives. She's good with children. She used to be a daycare teacher." That's when I handed Janet a folder I'd marked Exhibit M. Inside were printouts of Rachel's social media posts over the past 6 months, including photos of her drinking heavily at various parties, posts complaining about dealing with other people's brat kids, and most damaging of all, a series of messages to her friends where she detailed her plan to make the ex-wife's life hell until she moves away. Judge Hernandez spent another 10 minutes reviewing this evidence before addressing Rachel directly. "Ms. Martinez, do you have anything to say about these documented incidents?" Rachel, against her attorney's obvious wishes, decided to defend herself. "Your Honor, those children need to learn that their mother isn't the center of the universe anymore. I was just trying to help them adjust to reality." The judge's expression shifted to something I could only describe as controlled fury. "Ms. Martinez, what you've described is not helping children adjust. It's systematic emotional abuse. And what's more concerning is that you seem to believe your behavior was appropriate. The ruling was swift and decisive, effective immediately. Rachel was prohibited from any contact with my children, including indirect contact through Marcus. More significantly, Marcus's custody arrangement was modified from joint physical custody to supervised visitation only, pending completion of a family reunification program and anger management classes for both Marcus and Rachel. But the real consequences were just beginning. Within 2 weeks of the court ruling, Rachel's volunteer positions at 3 different schools in the district were revoked. The school district's legal department had decided that her documented harassment of children made her unsuitable for any role involving minors. The social media exposure was even more devastating. One of the parents who had witnessed Rachel's Halloween meltdown posted the video to a local Facebook group. Within 48 hours, it had been shared over 3,000 times, with Rachel's face clearly visible and her behavior on full display. The comments were brutal, and several of her Instagram sponsors dropped her after the video went viral. Marcus tried to contact me 3 weeks after the hearing, leaving a voicemail where he sounded exhausted and defeated. "Heather, I know I messed up. Rachel isn't who I thought she was. She's been obsessed with hurting you and the kids, and I was too stupid to see it. Is there any way we can work something out?" I didn't return his call immediately. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with Janet Peterson to discuss the next phase of my strategy. "They're going to try to negotiate now that they realize how badly they miscalculated," Janet warned me. "But don't let your guard down. The custody modification hearing is in 6 weeks, and that's where we finish this." The permanent custody hearing in December was a masterclass in preparation meeting opportunity. I arrived with Janet and 3 bankers' boxes of evidence. Marcus and Rachel arrived with a new attorney, their third one, as the first 2 had apparently withdrawn from the case after discovering the extent of Rachel's documented behavior. Dr. E. Sarah Kim testified for 45 minutes about the psychological impact of Rachel's harassment on my children. Emma had developed anxiety about attending school, and Jake had begun having nightmares about the mean lady who hates mommy. Her professional opinion was that continued contact with Rachel would cause lasting emotional damage. Principal David Young testified about the school's investigation into Rachel's behavior, presenting documentation of 12 separate incidents over a 3-month period. The school district's attorney also testified that Rachel had been placed on a permanent ban list, preventing her from accessing any school property in the county. But the most damaging testimony came from Marcus himself. Under oath, he admitted that he had been aware of Rachel's difficulties with my children, but had attributed it to normal adjustment issues. When pressed by Janet about specific incidents, he revealed that Rachel had bragged to him about putting those kids in their place and had explicitly stated her intention to make school uncomfortable for them until I agreed to modify the custody arrangement in Marcus's favor. Judge Hernandez listened to 6 hours of testimony before making her decision. Marcus's visitation was reduced to 4 hours per month, supervised by a court-appointed monitor, with absolutely no contact allowed between Rachel and the children. Furthermore, Marcus was ordered to pay for all counseling costs for both children, and to complete a parenting class focused on protecting children from adult conflicts. The financial impact on Marcus and Rachel was severe. Between legal fees, court costs, and the supervision fees, they were spending nearly $2,000 per month on the consequences of Rachel's harassment campaign. Marcus's construction business began suffering as word spread through our relatively small community about what had happened. 6 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Marcus and Rachel's marriage was falling apart. The stress of the legal battles, combined with the social isolation that came from their reputation in the community, had destroyed whatever attraction had originally brought them together. Rachel had moved back in with her parents and was working at a call center, her influencer career having collapsed along with her follower count. The final piece of poetic justice came a year later. Marcus called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice barely above a whisper. "Heather, Rachel's gone. She moved to Arizona with some guy she met online. The divorce is final next week. I know this doesn't fix what I did to our family, but I want you to know that I see now how wrong I was. About everything." I listened to his apology, acknowledged his regret, and then said, "Marcus, I hope you've learned something from this. Our children deserved better from both of us, but especially from you. You chose to let someone into their lives who wanted to hurt them. That's not something I can just forgive and forget." Today, my children are thriving. Emma no longer has anxiety about school, and Jake has returned to being the confident, happy kid he was before Rachel entered our lives. We've moved to a new house in a different school district. Ironically, the same district where my cousin David was recently promoted to superintendent. The experience taught me that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply allowing people to face the natural consequences of their choices. Rachel chose to harass children. She chose to document her harassment on social media. She chose to escalate her behavior when given opportunities to stop. And she chose to lie under oath about her motivations. I didn't destroy Rachel Martinez's life. I simply provided a detailed record of how she chose to destroy it herself. The courts, the school system, and the community did the rest. As for Marcus, he eventually completed his parenting classes and anger management program. His supervised visits gradually increased to unsupervised time, and while our relationship will never return to what it once was, he's learning to be a better father. The children have started to rebuild their trust in him, though it's a slow process. Looking back, I realized that my career in family law had prepared me perfectly for this situation. I understood documentation, I knew the legal system, and most importantly, I had the patience to let Rachel's own behavior build the case against her. Every instinct she had to escalate, to perform, to double down when challenged, worked in my favor. The most satisfying part wasn't watching Rachel face consequences, though. It was seeing my children regain their confidence and joy. It was watching Emma participate in school activities without fear and seeing Jake make new friends, without worrying about some adult attacking his family. It was proving to myself and to them that sometimes, when someone tries to hurt your family, the system actually works, if you know how to use it. Rachel Martinez thought she was punishing me for having the audacity to exist after her husband left me. What she actually did was provide me with a case study in how bullies destroy themselves when faced with someone who refuses to be intimidated. She underestimated a paralegal with 15 years of experience, a filing system that would make a federal prosecutor weep with joy, and a family connection who happened to have the authority to stop her harassment campaign cold. Some people call it karma. I call it preparation meeting opportunity. Either way, it was exactly what Rachel Martinez deserved, delivered by the very system she thought she could manipulate to hurt my children. The best part? She did most of the work herself. I just organized it into a comprehensive legal presentation and let the professionals do what they do best, Protect children from adults who choose to harm them. Justice isn't always swift, but when it's thorough, it tends to be permanent. Rachel. Martinez learned that lesson the hard way, and my children learned an even more important one, that their mother will always fight for them, no matter how long it takes or how complicated the strategy needs to be.